Tonight on the VERITAS project, we embark on a riveting journey into the life of Marina Seren, a remarkable 23-year-old experiencer from Spain. At just 16, Marina's world transformed through profound experiences that challenged her understanding of reality. From encounters with extraterrestrial beings to channeling knowledge beyond this world, Marina's story is one of awe-inspiring transformation and discovery. Marina has traversed the realms of astral travel and engaged with diverse alien species, developing abilities that defy conventional science. Her path has not been easy. She has endured ET and military abductions, rigorous training as a super soldier in the secret space program, and survived the harrowing MK Ultra mind control programming. Now, Marina is dedicated to aiding humanity's evolution, guided by her connections with her extraterrestrial family and positive military factions. Her awareness of past lives, including roles in the VRIL secret society and the Thule society, adds another layer to her fascinating narrative. Tonight, prepare to have your mind expanded and your perceptions challenged as we explore Marina Seren's incredible experiences, the wisdom she has garnered, and the profound messages she brings to our world. This is a conversation you won't want to miss as we dive deep into the extraordinary and the unknown. Marina Seren is coming up next. Welcome to the VERITAS project. I'm your host, Mel Hostelrick. If this is your first time listening, welcome home. To access tonight's full interview and all of our exclusive material, simply join the VERITAS Plus family by clicking on the subscribe button at veritasproject.com. And while you're there, don't forget to check out the VERITAS store for a range of great products, including focused life force energy. Experience the power of FLFE with a 15-day free trial today. No credit card required. If you're looking to get in touch with me, have a guest suggestion, or would like to provide feedback, simply click on the contact button on our website. Your thoughts and ideas are always appreciated. So sit back, relax, and enjoy tonight's program. And directly from Madrid, Spain, I'd like to welcome Marina Seren. Hello, Marina, and welcome to VERITAS. How are you?
Thank you. I'm fine. I'm good. Thank you for having me in your program.
My pleasure. It's really late where you are, and I really appreciate when my friends from all over on the other side of the pond stay awake so they can join us. So, Marina, I'm very curious. In 2016, you described your experience as almost having your soul leave your body. I want to know what happened and what transformed your life when you were 16 years old.
Sure. So when I was 16 years old, I was in high school and I was very sure that I wanted to become a physicist because physics is the way that we have to understand the structure of existence and the universe. And that was my passion and my curiosity. And that led me into studying and researching metaphysics, mostly the pineal gland and DMT, which is a molecule that is related to all of these paranormal activity experiences, such as astral projection. And I remember that when I was studying that matter and the double slit experiment, all of those things started to crystallize and solidify my brain, and I was started to feel as if I was remembering the information rather than gaining it from somewhere else. And I started to receive a very big amount of information, like downloads of information into my consciousness that I didn't even know where they were coming from, because it was like reading a book without having that book, in front of your eyes. And at that moment too, I remember that I felt the urge to meditate in my room. And just in 3 seconds, without even getting into any sort of trance, I was starting to feel energies, and it was like an out of body experience and an astral projection, but I was resisting a lot that experience to go on because I felt that I was being attacked, that it could be negative beings. So nevertheless, I continued and the path of research and of that matters. And that really, I think that experience is what started everything, like feeling as if I was a soul energy instead of a body, a physical body. And even though I still resisted these kinds of experiences, I get to read more and more about positive beings on the other side of this dimension or reality, let's say. And I started to take, on more meditation, let's say, experiences or whatever. And I got into ET contact. I got to see UFOs. I got to remember information. And I was very fascinated. And I felt that I was remembering. I didn't feel as if I was gaining more new information. It was like, oh, this is something that we all know. It felt very strange, but that triggered everything for me.
Before you were 16 years old, did you know that this was going to be the path you were going to take? Did you have any ET experiences? And when did you find out, and correct me if I'm wrong, you consider yourself to be a hybrid, am I right?
Well, I consider that everybody's a hybrid, but apart from that point, I do believe that the beings that have a higher percentage of ET DNA instead of hominid DNA are considered to be a hybrid as a label, let's say, as a way to for other people to understand where they are at in terms of their genetic gene pool. But I do not use the term hybrid as to like the, let's say, the most technical and correct definition of that term for me or anybody, because hybrid means 50% and 50% different species DNA mixed up together, and that's not the case for anybody here. So I use it as a way to define that I do have a higher percentage of ET-DNA, but I'm not 50% alien or human. That's not the case for anybody here.
When did you actually realize that you had that DNA, and what changed in your life? Did your parents know about this? Is there lineage within your parents that led you to this, or is this something that happened just to you?
Well, since I was like, I will say very small, like 7 years old or something, I felt that I was not from here, that my soul was not from this planet. And I will tell my parents, and my parents will feel, they will think that it is something that every kid could say just for, having fun or, exploring, their imagination or creativity. And I remember that I will be so serious that they will get scared. And I will say, well, I teleported to the womb of my mom. And when I became that technical, they obviously thought that I was probably weird or it was odd for a child, right, to say that. But I felt that when I was a child, and I will say that, with no filter. But when I was 13 years old, or approximately like adolescent or teenage, I remember that I started to feel again that there was something with my DNA and my lineage that was different from an average human. I always had that feeling within me. And I knew that I felt that in the future, something related to ETs, something related to paranormal stuff or abductions will come up into my life, and that I will be dedicating my full attention to that. And then, in 2016, that shift happened. So
I see the pendant that you wear. I mean, it's under your clothes right now, but I can see that you wear it all the time. That one, yes. The VRIL. Tell me, what's your connection with the VRIL?
So in 2019 or 18, no, actually it was a little bit earlier. I had a boyfriend that was very aware of these German secret occult societies. And I do remember that I was having these strange dreams at that time in which it was like very real. And I was having what's called past life regressions and regressive past life therapies, like regressive therapies, it's called. So I remember that at that time, I had a dream in which I saw a member of the SS, which is one of my past lives too. And he was in World War II, and he was talking to his wife, and there was a child in there too. And I got shown that person, that incarnation, and I realized that I was him, that was my most recent incarnation. And then when I stepped back from that scenario, I saw a gigantic wall that said Maria Orsic in capital letters. And I reached out to my boyfriend, and he will tell me about Maria Orsic because he knew who she was. And he explained to me about the VRIL Society and about the mediums of this VRIL metaphysical research group and also the Thule Society. And then I got past life regression again in a therapy. And I realized that I had 2 incarnations during the 20th century, and they coexist together because time is not linear. So I have 2 incarnations in the Reich and related to German history, related to that side of the war, let's say. And in one of them, I saw myself as a VRIL maiden. And in another one, I saw myself as an SS officer or general.
So for those who don't know what the VRIL Society was and who Maria Orsic was, can you explain a little bit?
Sure. Maria Orsic was a psychic medium that was from Austria originally, but she was told to go to Germany by some ET beings that she became in contact with when she was very young, which are the Nordics from Aldebaran. Some people call them Anunnaki and some people call them Pleiadian, but it's actually the same term, but in different context. And she was told that she needed to go to Germany to start a society that was called VRIL. And she started channeling very important information about anti-gravity technology and metaphysical knowledge regarding Aryanism or regarding the Aryan race and superhuman powers, basically, which is VRIL energy. It's basically the term that we use here in Europe that is equivalent to in Asia the term Hui or Prana. It's that universal energy that anybody can channel in order to translate it into any form of energy, like electricity or electromagnetism. In fact, there is a book that is called the VRIL, the Coming Race, that talks about an inner civilization of beings that master this energy and can utilize it in various forms for attacking enemies, to healing themselves, to powering their own electrical or devices. They can do anything with this energy. And so that's where everything comes, really, the term and the word. That's why this symbol is a V. It's coming from that race, from that species, from that term that it was written in that novel for the first time in the world. And it's a thunderbolt because obviously it's represented energy, electricity, electromagnetism, but also the Sich rune, which is associated with the sun and with victory and obviously with this form of energy.
The VRIL Gesellschaft, that's how it's known, I believe. And Maria Orsic, she vanished after World War II. There's a lot of speculation that she could have moved to Antarctica or somewhere else. What do you think happened with her? And I don't know if I heard this from you or someone else who says that she's still alive.
Yes, that is correct. I did say that she's still alive because when I was having my past life regressions and I realized that I took part in this VRIL Gesellschaft, they became in contact with me because they understood that it was important for me and other members of the VRIL reincarnated to understand who they were in a past life, so that all that information that they have in their DNA, it can be channeled back in this incarnation so that they get the downloads of knowledge that they need in order to continue that mission. So there's a lot of people that are obviously saying crazy lies about the VRIL and about that period of time in history on purpose, because they're being guided by other deceiving entities to hide that part of history from people or to manipulate it so that people don't understand the true essence of those societies and their mission here on Earth. So, because there's so much knowledge and power in those books, in those societies, in that part of history, and it will change the world if the world knew about them. They want to hide it. So I understand that they reach out to me again so that I will remember, so that I will keep continuing this mission that I have with them on helping the world.
Now let's go back now. I don't mean to stay with Germany for a moment, but this is really fascinating because a lot of people think that these societies vanished after World War II, and that is not the case. Let's go to Rudolf von Sebottendorf. He's the founder of the Thule Society. Tell us about the Thule Society and your involvement.
Sure. So when I was involved in the Thule Society, it was in my most recent incarnation, post the VRIL maiden one, and I was an SS general within the Schutzstaffel. I was a brigade Führer, which means brigade of the brigade of the army, you know. And when I was in this position, I was part not only of the Thule Society, but also the Ahnenerve, which was a more secret society, but more, I think it's lesser. I think the Thule one is lesser known by the public right now. But the Ahnenerve basically was about mostly the studying the relics of Aryans, such as the Holy Grail or even Arthuric mythologies. But also, it was mostly about recovering the information about the origins of the Aryan race. And the Thule Society was basically very involved in the metaphysical knowledge of ancient Hyperborea, Gnostic knowledge about the ancient Hyperboreans, and very deep metaphysics involving also VRIL and very advanced technology that once the great Aryans had, you know, in places like specifically Thule or Ultima Thule. And that's why that's the name of the society. That's why they pick up that word, because Thule was the capital of Hyperborea.
Interesting. Also, I'm glad you mentioned the Ahnenerbe, the German Ancestral Heritage Society for the Study of Ancient Intellectual History. Again, one of those institutions that we're told it's gone. But I remember about 10 years ago, one of our guests summoned me, Marina, to a Native American reservation that only with permission can I go in. So he summoned me there to a secret location, and he showed me a ring. And I said, you know, what is that ring? He says, this is the Ahnenerbe. The Ahnenerbe is still alive, and I'm a member of it. And if you've seen, folks, pictures of, you know, the SS and so on, going to different places around the world looking for ancient documents, you know, Tibet, and what do you think? Let me try to articulate this the best I can. But the Allies, when they went to Peenemünde and they found all these exotic technology there, I sometimes wonder, why didn't Hitler win the war with all this technology? But do you think that a lot of this technology came from these books and documents that they found through the Ahnenerbe?
The technology itself came from the secret societies like Thule and VRIL, who were channeling antiquarian knowledge and theoretics, physical theories on how to basically have the base for constructing those flying saucers, or the Honeywood project, for example. So it didn't really came from the Ahnenerbe, like the technology, but it's true that the Ahnenerbe was very involved in esoteric Aryan relics, as I was saying, such as the Holy Grail and Arthuric legends and mythologies, and the Ark, the Emerald tablets. You know, all these different relics that are very known for having metaphysical powers that someone could tell that is similar to very advanced technology, because at the end of the day, very advanced technology is directly connected to metaphysical powers or abilities or anything that is to it, you know, that is electromagnetic at the end of the day. But yeah, it's true that they went to Tibet and India and even Spain or many parts around the world because they wanted to know more about this ancient history of the world, not just the German heritage, because they are very aware of who they are as a people. So they call themselves the Deutsch people, or they don't count those Germans anymore, at least in the programs that I'm in, that there are, let's say that I can find these peoples that come from these societies, you know. And yeah, they're very aware of who they are, but they are also aware of their connections to great civilizations such as Hyperborea, Atlantis, and they know that their origins are also to be traced in places like this part of Asia, as they were going to Nepal and India. So of course, it's the ancient Aryans. They know about the migrations of these peoples, and there are many documents that obviously show how there is a direct correlation in between them and these other races within the Indo-European gene pool. Or
we've seen a lot of symbols that the powers that want to be continue to put forward so that we can erase the meanings of before. I remember growing up, I used to love the rainbow. Now, you can't even use the rainbow because you're associated with a certain group. No offense to anybody. But the swastika has been around for thousands of years. In India, in Sanskrit, the word swastika means basically good fortune or well-being. But of course, we now demonize that symbol as Nazis and the criminals of the Nazis. I'm not going to get into, all these things. But what do you think happened to the Nazis, especially Adolf Hitler, after the war?
So I am aware that after 1945, there were groups of Germans that were connected to these secret societies and knowledge that became an independent civilization altogether. That is the German breakaway civilizations. And many of them traveled to the inner earth. Many of them traveled to Antarctica. And some of them traveled to other star systems such as Aldebaran. Other groups, within these German people and societies or Nazis, were actually creating or signing contracts with what we call the Draconian Empire. And they created what's called the Dark Fleet. And others started with the technology that they acquired from all these various experiments with this channel information from the Nordics and the VRIL Society on anti-gravity technology, what is called the Secret Space Program. And they initiated various projects within it that involve super soldiers, the creation of beings that they will perceive as Übermenschen, which means superhuman, and basically train them to be used for various militaristic operations and interests. And many of them of the space program too, and the Dark Fleet are also in the Antarctic region and also near Earth. So they're not quite the same groups because they differ from certain, let's say, I will say it's not ideology altogether, but it's also purpose, I will say, or interests. And yes, you can see the Antarctic base, it's called the 211. They are there, and I have had experiences in there, and I can tell that they are operating, and that's why the Antarctic region is protected. It's not because of the ecosystem, it's because they signed a treaty with the American government since the Operation Paperclip, in which the German scientists infiltrated the CIA, and they said, listen, we want to have this space for us, and we do not desire for anybody to intervene and to be in our space. This is restricted to us. So that's why it was internationally agreed that nobody could be there technically. It was not for the ecosystem. It was for them to have their own space and be able to populate that land with their own civilization and with the technology that they have to themselves. As like Adolf Hitler himself, I have no idea the theories in which people claim that he escaped the falling of Berlin, of course, and the end of the war, that he was brought to Argentina and therefore to Antarctica. I have no idea if that is exactly true. I think it might be true, but all I know is that I know that he passed away eventually, because when I was put in contact with members of the National Socialist Party or with the Suselstaffel, the new ones, of course, they showed me in the ships a very special place that they have, which was to make kind of like, it was like an honorable place for Hitler, for the Führer, in which they show me let's say the bones or the parts of the corpse of the Führer that were left after he passed away. So they showed me his biological vessel, but obviously dead. So they were kind of like showing me that he indeed passed away, so that I will know. And they were very respectful of that place. It's like a memorial place.
What I'm told is that the body that was found in the bunker was that of a woman, and it was the Russians who actually did a DNA test and found that it was a woman. Do you know about this?
Yeah, I heard about that. That's why I do believe more that he indeed traveled or escaped to Argentina. And yeah, I don't believe that he was cremated in the Führerbunker. And I definitely do think that the rests that they have are not the rests that of Hitler, because I have seen it in a space program. They showed me the bones and the rests of the body of Hitler, so I know that he is not cremated in Germany, in that place, and that is not true. So I agree with you in that theory.
In 1946-47, Admiral Byrd, you probably know the story of Admiral Byrd,
Yes.
going down to Antarctica, and they were supposed to be there for, I believe, 2 months, and they came back 2 weeks, and they get their butts kicked by some technology and some civilization. And the question is, was that us, meaning the Germans, or was that an alien species that lives there? And just multi-pronged question. In 1952, they came to Washington. They came to Washington twice in 2 different weekends to show themselves. I mean, if you're flying above the capital of the United States, basically you're saying, hey, this is what we can do, and there's nothing you can do about it. The question is, were those the new Germans or were the ET?
Well, I do believe when it comes to Admiral Byrd, I know that the beings that he's mostly in contact with is obviously the Germans, yes, the German breakaway civilization, the New Germans, as you call them, but also the inner Earth Aryans or the Agarthians. So when it comes to ships, I will say that yes, it could be the Germans. But all I know is that he's aware of me. um, he contacted me in dreams, in the dream state, and he asked me to read one of his books, which is called Discovery. So I have the one original piece of that book in my home. I had to buy it because I felt that I needed to fulfill that request from him. And he explained to me a lot of things that I need to know in this incarnation about him, about the Agarthians, and about the New Germans, all of that, so that I could continue here on my mission. So, yes.
What can you tell me about Agartha, Hyperborea, Lemuria, Atlantis?
Well, those civilizations represent very specific points in human history. And this is pretty much explained by Elena Blavatsky, which was a very popular theosophist and also metaphysical researcher. And basically, it does talk about how the human species is predetermined or configured to pass through 7 primordial cycles of evolution to achieve enlightenment. And that is why in our dimension we have 7 colors in the spectrum of light and 7 chakras, because 7 is the number of root races and or civilizations or periods of evolution that we need to go through in order to achieve that enlightenment and that mastering of our own DNA, gene pool, or species. And each phase represents one of the elements of nature of our own, let's say, bodies. And so the first one is the Polarians, and it's represented by the red color. And then the second one is the Hyperboreans. And we have the Atlanteans and the Lemurians and the Aryans. And then now we are going to a next phase of evolution in which we will become that 6th root race. And so this is all aligned with the precession phenomena of the Earth. Precession is another movement within the Earth and inside the solar system, in which the Earth has another, let's say, rotation of itself, but not really towards itself, but pointing out the north of the Earth. It's pointing out. It's more moving towards pointing in the north of it. The north hemisphere to another star system every 26 approximately 1,000 years. So it's not exactly that amount of years, but approximately I'm giving you a number. So every 1,000 years, we are aligning our north hemisphere with another star system, and that is what determines a shift within the cycle of evolution in this planet, in humanity. That's why we had also pole shifts and other events going on, such as the Ice Age, that destroyed one civilization, and then another will be recreated out of that one and be another one. That's what happens all the time, but it's all related to that knowledge and to that that idea.
So you're talking about the great year, 25,920 years, and
yes,
I don't know why the thought of the Prague clock, the Prague clock, that clock has been there for hundreds of years. It shows almost like every so often when we change to a different zodiac sign, we're supposed to be entering now into the age of Aquarius, and resets happen throughout history. And then, what is ice, say Antarctica, then it becomes tropical again in this part of the world. Maybe we go back to being ice, and then there's a nomadic race that becomes us, and we have to move again. Do you lend credence to that?
Absolutely. In fact, that is why in ancient texts in which people talk about the ancient land of Hyperborea, they were describing a land in which it was always sunny and it was like a spring weather and very green. Because in the North Pole, it was not a winter. It was not freeze or frozen. And that is because of when the tilt was developed in the Earth, then the North Pole have a different orientation towards the sun. So that's why now they're not receiving enough radiation so that the heat is proximate to that weather of a spring. And that's why they're frozen, So yes, I do give credentials to those theories because I understand what they talk about.
If anybody's a pilot who's listening to us, they know that every few years, a lot of airports have to change the numbers of the runways because those are the degrees, and the degrees are changing all the time. Now, what's causing this? Is it because every few years we change? And then, when is the next shift, in your opinion?
The next shift we're experiencing right now. It is another precession, another leap within the precession rotation of the Earth, and we will become the sixth race. And within that, what we are experiencing too is that there's a pole shift, and of course, the electromagnetic field of the Earth is changing. It is becoming weaker because when there is a pole shift happening, the electromagnetic field of the Earth, obviously, which defends us or protects us, from heat and sun radiation, is causing weather changes or changes within the ecosystems. And that is why the leftist parties, political ideologies are taking opportunity upon this, because obviously there are climate change. They are saying that it's all for, it's all human, it's the fault of humans and the carbon footprint, but that is not true. They use that because they want, not only because they want to add more taxes and all of that, but because they truly want to hide that information from humans. Because if they didn't hide that and blame it upon carbon footprint, people will be asking why there is a change within the climate. And people will investigate and say, well, there's a pole shift going on and magnetic pole shift going on. And that is why what is causing that we have much more heat in our weather, because our electromagnetic field is getting weaker, so we cannot protect the Earth that much, our ecosystems.
I'm going to just shotgun you with 3 questions. The primordial questions. Who are we? Why are we here? And where are we going?
So we are a result of a hybridization in between hominids and ET species. Now, the ET species in questions are Anunnaki, but many other ET races took part in this experiment. And again, there will be many people that will be saying that we were created. There's an old story going on and being passed around in the New Age circles that talk about how we were created to be mining gold or something and originally were slaves. That is not true. That only applies to one specific I will say, genetic gene pool or group, but I'm not going to go into that because I'm going to get extremely harassed for knowing that or for saying that. But I was told that, and so we are not coming from that experiment because we were meant to be slaves. We were created as an experiment because they saw potential in us in this project, let's say, and they understood that Earth is a very rich planet with rich ecosystems, and that it had many connections altogether with their own species and star systems. And if they will be part of this genetic experiment, they will benefit and we will benefit too. So it was created as a positive project, not as a negative one. We didn't come from negativities who want us to be slaves, obviously. And so, what are we doing here? Well, obviously, following that plan, following that experiment, and so that we can all achieve enlightenment, we can benefit our planet and, per se, other star systems and other ET races. And we can assist in clearing a lot of karmic cycles that we brought from other cycles of evolution from humanoids, too, like the Orion system, for example, in which many of our many humans took part and incarnated from, so that they could clear their karmic cycles. So we have many different individual purposes or even collective purposes, but altogether we are here to become that masters of our own selves and species, and obviously make the Earth a great planet for evolved beings and evolved consciousness, obviously.
Let me unpack a few things you said. If anybody wants to know more about this story of the Anunnaki, from those who came from above, Enki, Enlil, the mining for gold, slavery here, listen to my interview with Zachariah Sitchin, which happened to be his final interview. But also Robert Bouval, he talks about the Orion conspiracy, with all the pyramids in Egypt point to that constellation. What is the connection that we have here on Earth with Orion?
Well, Orion represents very dark times altogether in this galaxy's history, let's say, collective history. They went under very similar circumstances and, let's say, historical contexts or scenarios as us, in which there were people that took the places of power and become tyrannical and started to degenerate, along with not only tyranny but also desire to have power over others and feed off from others' energies and power and fear and control. So there was a resistance that was created there, and souls were fighting for their own freedom and their peace, for their own civilization. And eventually that was very karmic. There were a lot of wars, there was a lot of fear, a lot of very dark things going on. And so we brought a lot of those karmic cycles into this planet. So that's why some things within this historical, let's say, context on Earth are very similar to those ones on Orion, because we brought them, and it's in the DNA, not only on the bodies, but just also the souls of many of the ones who are incarnated in this planetary consciousness. And so we're repeating it collectively, but we are here to finally put an end to that. And if we help ourselves in these matters, in, let's say, putting an end to that karma, we are helping the Orion people too. And that past life, let's say, references or parallel incarnations of us. So it's a part within our consciousness, fractals of our consciousness that exist in right now too, but parallelly to this timeline.
When I say who we are here now, I guess the question is, it seems to me absurd that we're here just to work from 8 to 5, to earn a paycheck, to work until we almost die. There must be a different purpose for why we're here. What do you think that purpose should be?
That purpose is remembering who we are. Our power, our greatest power, lays in our identity. And once we remember who we are, we will remember what is our greatest passion and our purpose here. Our most important spiritual purpose here is our passion, and it's that based on all of that is based in our identity altogether. That's why every dark entity is attacking every dark being or collective is attacking our identity, because they understand that that's where our empowerment lays in. And that's why also we are forced to be kind of like attached to this system, to this educational system in which we get to think that we are meant to be one thing or another thing, but not multifaceted as we originally are. We're multidimensional beings, so we are meant to be doing many things if we desire to, but we are forced to do only one thing, and to be labeled as only one service, one job, one whatever title. So it's obviously made on purpose, so that we destroy that multidimensional essence of us, and we are trapped into this system of never-ending behavioral patterns that doesn't lead us into a full awakening of who we truly are.
Obviously, and I say this with the utmost respect, Marina, you're 23 years old, and you have acquired so much knowledge, and some of the things you talk about, some people who are in their 80s, and they're finally getting it. But you obtain all of this knowledge at such a young age. Was this downloaded, or did you just read a lot of books?
100% it was downloaded.
Incredible. And I say this because you probably know this. The educational system is designed to dumb us down. I recently wrote an article about the George Land study. This individual went to NASA because NASA said, hey, we need to bring a lot of geniuses to NASA. So he went out there to schools, and he found out that the first time he did the survey, he surveyed 5-year-olds at a school. 98% of these young children scored at genius level. And then 5 years later, at age 10, 30% were geniuses. Then at 5 more years, 12%. And once they went to adults, 2% were geniuses. So obviously something happens in the educational system that dumbs us down. How would you, if you were in charge, remove Pedro Sanchez from Spain for a moment and you are the leader, what would you do to change the educational system?
Well, I will create a system that offers a space for every individual to explore who they are and what are the things that excite them the most. And first of all, work on their passion. Because something that we can notice in our current educational system is that you must not pay attention to anything that they don't consider that is relevant, and that you must believe everything that they taught you to be true. So I will also work on creating an educational system or organization that helps people to question everything that they read and that they're taught. It doesn't matter if it comes from a teacher or an adult or their own parents. They must question truth, and they must question their own history. I think that leads into one individual coming into channeling their own self and aligning with their higher mind, rather than picking up information from others, other egos, other individuals. And that state of channeling is what we need, so that children can still be geniuses when they reach out the adult phase of their lives, because that is what genius means, that you are a very great channel for your higher mind and higher fractals of consciousness of your own self.
How has your intellect affected you in your personal life with your peers?
My intellect, are you talking about my IQ?
Your IQ, your experiences, everything you've gone through. Can you coexist with your peers without having to switch to trying to be a normie in a way?
Well, yes. When it comes to IQ and intelligence altogether, we understand that a genius is not just one that is very knowledgeable on one matter or another, like science or logic or even creativity, but also emotional intelligence. So I am a genius. I am labeled as a genius by a psychologist, and I do have a lot of emotional intelligence too. So, of course, even though I know a lot of things that my peers or my friends are not aware, I know how to not switch, because I don't pretend to fit in a way that I stop being myself, but I know ways of adapting to this society so I can still be myself, but without, let's say, having a problem with adapting to, or not adapting, but rather synchronizing or being harmonious with the way that my society functions. I believe that in this life, it's not all about just discovering who you are and being yourself altogether, but also adapting to the ecosystem. That is a part of the survival aspect of our consciousness that is also needed in order to continue your own life along with the rest of your own collective consciousness. Both things are important, so I do know how to be myself, but without letting them turn me into an army or forcing me to, believe or act in their own manners.
And no offense to the normies. I know some people chose to live in a slumber. No matter how much information you give them, they decide to be that way. And we saw that in the past 3-4 years, and we're going to see that again, hopefully not. But you like physics when you were in school. How do you integrate the concepts of quantum physics into your spiritual beliefs, particularly, and this is something I want you to explain, regarding the double slit experiment and its implications on reality? And this is why I said you have so much knowledge at 23.
Well, the double slit experiment is one of the theories that triggered my desire for researching more on the matters of metaphysics, and that kind of like quantum jump that made me stop being so, let's say, pure logical, but rather open-minded, because there is no other explanation as to why particles in that experiment behaves like waves, rather than understanding that and accepting the fact that actually they're behaving as waves of quantum probability, because consciousness is that one primordial element in this universe that determines our reality, whether if it's solid or not, because everything is a holographic projection. It does not matter if it's more dense, therefore more material based, or that is astral, but everything is truly is light. It is electromagnetic projection. So it really made me understand that we do live in a sort of simulation, and that consciousness does create everything around us, surrounding us. So it was that awakening.
If you were taking a ride in the countryside and you saw all these cows on the side of the road with a little, stickers on their, they have branding, they have stickers on their ears. Obviously, you know that they are somebody's property. Do you think that we are the same and another species sees us as cattle, or is that just an urban legend?
Well, it does not matter if you truly understand how consciousness works and belief systems, more importantly. If they perceive you as their cattle and they have created somehow some form of labeling that other beings can perceive, from their perspective, it does not really matter. Mostly because those beings are not necessarily going to buy into that reality and that form of belief system. So they're going to just bypass that and relate to us in their own way, following their own beliefs and their own reality. And we do not pay attention to that, and we do not believe that we are submitted to their power and we are free and sovereign, and it's not affecting our belief system, both individually and collectively. Obviously, it's not going to be relevant at all at the end of the day.
Now, let me switch here for a moment, because you are a psychic, correct?
Yes, I am.
How do you differentiate between information received through psychic abilities and mediumship versus your own intuition or subconscious mind?
Oh, that's because all of that is interconnected. The subconscious mind, it is connected also to the physical one, to the higher mind, to the superconscious one. They're all fractals of your own consciousness. So we cannot really draw a line in between intuition, subconscious, and the higher mind or psychic abilities. It's all interconnected, and many processes work along. Many processes of our consciousness are being projected from all of those minds all together, all of those fractals. So there's no line in between them. They're the same thing. Our intuition and subconscious is also a part of our higher mind.
Project Looking Glass. I believe you discuss that a lot in the CIA. You also, I mean, there's so much to discuss. The secret space program, the Dark Fleet, the CIA, MK Ultra, all these things you were involved. Tell me about your involvement and some of the people that you've been involved with, if you can talk about that.
Sure, I can. I was threatened by them, but I don't mind. When I was 16 and I was having my awakening and I was remembering past lives, information, I was getting downloads. One of the things that I got to remember is scenes of me as a child in which I was in a laboratory and I was surrounded by human doctors or scientists who were performing certain practices in my sexual organs that were very painful, but at the same time very traumatizing too. And it really affected my psyche and and when I remember that, I remember all the trauma that is behind all of that project, even though I didn't recall all the details of paranormal information. Just that experience, just that scene that came into me as a very solid memory. When I remember, I felt all the trauma and I felt very horrible. I felt traumatized. And what I went through for years after I recall that, it was extreme symptoms of PTSD. So I was going through PTSD and I couldn't even talk to my psychologist and say, hey, I have a trauma. Because if I say that this happened to me as a child, they will not believe me and they will probably think that I'm crazy. But I went through that. And in the year 2020, approximately, I was getting downloads on why I was going through that PTSD and what it was about. And I started having a lot of regression sessions, therapist sessions too, in which I remember and recall that I was in a project called MK Ultra, specifically the Monarch one, the Monarch project. And I've seen myself being surrounded by elite military personnel, and they were using what is called trauma-based mind control, in which they shatter your psyche. And once your psyche is shattered into pieces, like glass, they start to program your alter personalities to create alter egos or personas that are going to be fitted and trained to attain or to be useful for certain militaristic operations or interests. So within the MK Ultra, we know that there's alpha, beta, and other versions of it, like that can be pretty much used for different interests, as I was saying. For example, the beta one in Monarch Project, we understand that is sexual programming, that is sexual training, and it's what we call the sex kittens. I understood that in the space program, in the Dark Fleet, not the space program, but in the Dark Fleet, I was being trafficked and I was being put to have sex with people of power, with military people, with people that were politicians, but mostly military. And then obviously the alpha ones, the alpha programs are more of the military super soldier versions of one's personality, and mostly are trained to become psychic soldiers. In my case, I saw how I was being trained with cards, not the center cards with the symbols, but multiple cards to train psychic abilities, and how I was being trained also on remote viewing and astral projection. And I was used in also other organizations such as the umbrella corporations that are related. There are secret bases, like military bases, that are related altogether with MK Ultra projects and super soldier projects. And basically I saw how they were experimenting on us and utilizing us to make us like basically psychic soldiers.
So we think of MK Ultra, we think of Stranger Things. You probably know that, right? It's they fictionalize what may be true after all. But not a lot of people think that in Spain. You grew up in Spain. Have you been to the United States before?
I've never been to the US.
That you know of, right?
That I know. Well, yes, obviously I've been there in the astral, and I've been there in military underground bases, but I have not been there physically.
Right. So the reason why I ask you is because, when we think of MK Ultra, as you said, it's the Monarch Project. We've had Kathy O'Brien here discuss all of this. We have super soldiers. I remember my talk with Max Spears, James Rink, James Casbolt. Do you know any of these names?
Yes, of course.
So have you ever met them, and do they have the same purpose, or do they have different purposes in the end?
Well, it is a very, very big program because it's being used. It's like a formula. Once you have it, every single organization or independent military faction can utilize it in their own manners with differences and with different interests. So, for example, we know that the Illuminati use it for entertainment purposes, that there are many monarchs that are used for creating, sex kittens and beta slaves, But we know that on other matters that the Starfleet or the space programs are more oriented towards using it to create super soldiers. So it depends on the organization, on the people behind it itself, not so much about the project itself, because it's very widely spread around. It's very secret information, but it depends on the people behind it and what are their collective interests, I will say.
Let's go back to your ET experience. Many people are curious about your first contact with ET beings. Can you describe the first encounter with these beings, and how did it happen, and what were your initial thoughts and feelings?
Well, when I was a child, I used to have dreams of being on a spacecraft and with ETs. And to me, it was so familiar that I will not think that this was my imagination or that this was something else. I thought that everybody knew that it was real and that that's reality and that's how life is, And so, but I didn't really put so much focus or attention on that because I knew that adults will not follow me. And I will forget eventually about the ET aspect until I became a teenager again, like 16. And when my awakening happened at 16 years old, it's when I started to have more of these experiences consciously, and I was being taken out of my body in astral projections, and I was being contacted by my star family, by groups within the space program, or by other ETs that somehow were connected with me or had any desire to interact with me.
What do you believe is the primary agenda of the extraterrestrials you have encountered? Are they here to help, observe, or something else?
Well, I'm aware of a lot of them. So that's a pretty ambiguous question because I have met beings that are highly agenda-based, that have very horrible agendas against human will and human sovereignty, like the hybrid gray programs. I battled them for like 1 or 2 years straight because I understood that they were using me for some time to become, let's say, a propagandist for their agendas and their storylines. And when I realized that they were using me and that at the end of the day, I was not aligned with those interests and I did not wanted any form of hybridization with the grays, I was highly attacked by them, because I was speaking out against them and I was sharing with people how their interests are not for us to become more evolved, but rather to become genetically invaded by them, by these mixes of hybridization. So, yeah, I have met beings that are highly agenda-based like them, like the Greys and reptilians reptilians are very generic, like saying human. So I met with positive reptilians that necessarily are not here for any selfish interest, but rather for observing and expression of their own consciousness. And of course, I did met a lot of ETs that are here for helping us and assisting us, because somehow also they are connected with us genetically. And those are the ones that are working with now mostly in my life, because I am tired of ETs that are trying to take advantage of that lack of empowerment within our own collective consciousness and placing in our own mind their own sneaky agendas. So I'm working with the ones that are less agenda-based and rather more interested in just assisting us in becoming whoever we want to become.
How many of these species have been here before us? And if the answer is yes, they've been here before us, why not take over? Because, I've talked to people who talk about the hybrid programs, and they say they're essentially terraforming this planet to displace us in the future. Is that true?
Well, in the case of the Greys, yes. And they're trying to convince humans with a narrative that they are us from the future, which is very it's very uncanny because it can be true that they're a version of us in the future that degenerated genetically and now they need help. But it does not mean that it is our future, because we have plenty of possibilities ahead of us. So it's not a solidified probability within our timeline. So it's gaslighting what they're performing on our collective consciousness. And so using that story to convince humans to breed with them and then tell them that they need to accept those children and bring them here on Earth and mix up with everyone and create this whole mess of genetics, that is something that I identify as invasion. It is a passive invasion agenda. And I do not agree with any of these programs. It is not for the benefit of our own species. It takes away any form of empowerment and sovereignty, because it is literally destroying our own genetic blueprint as a collective, as a species. We will not be us, we will be another species. So I don't want humanity to stop existing. I want humanity to become better genetically by activating that which we already have, but it is dormant. Becoming superhuman is not necessarily by mixing up with other ETs. That is destroying our genetic collective blueprint or our essence. I do believe that it is all about just recovering lost information, lost knowledge, lost abilities, and reawakening those codons.
Is it true that all these species have the non-intervention policy in place, or is that just, to pacify us, for us to believe that they will not get involved?
I have worked with hybrid programs that do follow that policies, because when I said that I will not work with them anymore because it was not my desire, they've respected that decision of mine and they just move away of my life. And they were humanoids. They were pretty human looking, not so distinct from us. But when it comes to the Greys, I have to say that they're all here. They're all here for control narratives and for passive invasion agendas, because they are the only ones that did not respect my choice of not following up with their narrative and with their programs, and they insisted. They abducted me again and again and again, and they forced me to keep interacting with them until I finally remember how to empower myself and break contracts with them on higher levels of my consciousness so that this interaction will not be possible.
I'll leave to part two, the other part about the invasion, because you're right, that's an invasion. And this is actually happening around the world, especially in Europe and this part of the world in other ways. But I didn't want to talk about that during part one, because then if I ever put this on YouTube, they'll shut me down once again. I get strikes all the time. But before we take a break, tell us, how can people learn more about your work, your website, and so on?
Sure. So I have a website called marinaseren.com. They can learn more about my stories in YouTube too, which is Marina Seren. And basically, I have plenty of interviews placed up in YouTube channels that are not mine, but they can definitely know more about me there. I'm working more on my YouTube channel so that more of my information it's there on this platform and people can get to know me better. But pretty much almost everything is there, but not fully. So yeah, I mean, it's a work in process. I keep having new experiences, so I do believe that I need to make more videos, because I've been very restricted to talk about my most recent experiences, and I think that is very limiting for people to get to know more about who I am. But yeah, those are the most the most preferred platforms for people to reach out to me.
We have one more hour, so can you tell us a little bit more on the next hour about your new experiences?
Sure.
Wonderful.
Sure, absolutely.
Folks, we're here with Marina Seren, directly from Spain. One more hour, and I promise you, we'll get deeper. A lot of times I cannot talk about certain things during part one, but she promised me that we're going to take our gloves off and we can talk about anything. Right, Marina?
Right.
Excellent. One more hour to come. This is Mel Hasselrick, and you are listening to VERITAS. Don't go anywhere. Thank you for listening to the first part of this important VERITAS episode. To listen to the rest and access all of our exclusive material, head over to the Veritas Plus member section or click the subscribe button at veritasproject.com. Don't forget to visit the Veritas store for a range of great products, including focused life force energy. Experience the benefits with a 15-day free trial of FLFE today. No credit card required. If you'd like to get in touch with me, be a guest on the program, have a guest suggestion, or want to provide feedback, just click the contact button on our website at veritasproject.com. Thank you for listening to The Veritas Project, because you don't want to believe, you want to know.